Thank you so much, Trevor. And yes, with today's games behind us, it is time to load into the post-game lobby, and we already did. We're going to recap all of the action today, starting with the last series. And of course, joining us here is Trashy, 2-0 on the day versus Giants. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Well, let's start straight by talking about that series, because the first thing you said when you sat down here was it didn't feel like a win as much as we would want it to. What's your perspective on that?
It's kind of weird. I think this is the first time where we are going into a game and we're the favorites, right? People expect us to show good play and maybe just win against Giants pretty easily in a way. But today was not easy at all. I think the series could easily win 2-0 for them or 1-1. But I mean, I'm happy that we won, but I'm not satisfied with the way we played at all.
Is that actually something that factored into your mentality? Because if we go all the way back to the start of Game 1, you guys had a really good gank there, I think, on Smitty. Then you went mid, really good gank onto Knight. Everything was going fine. By 10 minutes, you guys were 3-0 up. But then you started, in my opinion, overreaching for some of these ganks. Yeah. Almost taking it to a solo queue level where you're just like, okay, any move I make will result in a kill. But they countered it.
Yeah, it became a bit of a clown game at that point. I was dying like left and right, and now I had to like refocus and say like now calm down a bit. I know they have like outscaling comp, but we need to not just overreach for kills and play it more slow, and it helped a bit.
Did you feel like perhaps it was a limitation that you guys couldn't do too much outside of a hook landing in Game 1? Was that a problem with what you guys were running?
No, not necessarily. What we did wrong is that we focused too much around the mid lane. What we want to do is we want to spread out the map, and then, for example, if Lucian shows on a side and then Olaf is pressuring the Maokai top, then Fizz can support with TP. Like we were not playing the map correctly at all, and that was the problem for sure.
I definitely think in that matchup, I want to echo what Trash is saying here. Like, you guys seem to try and like fix the broken Fizz Azir matchup once behind, but once you guys actually spread out Fizz to a side lane, top laner it was Olaf to the other one, and you guys had a couple double TP plays. That's when you started really working together with the comp. The point I want to get to actually is now with Mickey in there, replacing Nisbeth, I feel like Splice can now win some of those games where you guys start struggling and throwing your lead, you know, that you did last split as well, and then you would just slowly bleed to death. I think with the introduction of Mickey, it seems that you guys can actually come back in these games. One, do you feel like that? And two, what is he contributing that makes it so?
I think one part that has nothing to do with Mickey is that overall our understanding of the game, everyone has grown so much that we can easier like recognize we need to do this and this now. Else, this is the only thing we can do, for example. So, but on the other hand, Mickey is so talented that he can make those crucial plays that will turn the game around. So, I think it's a mix of things.
Yeah. Do you also look at the game differently? You mentioned, hey, it was because we were looked at as favorites. Maybe that's why we weren't as happy with the loss. How much of a change is that? The fact that people look at you that way?
This is probably the first time in my career as a pro player where people expect a lot from me and my team to show that we're not just some bottom team that is gonna be a bit of a relegation team or relegated team, right? So it's a new mindset, and we have to understand this as well. But I think our coach is doing a great job of keeping us down a bit, not getting too hypey about it, and just focus on each game.
So is that something you anticipated already at the end of last week coming into this week's games, or is that when you got closer and closer to this series that you actually realized, oh wait, this is something we need to actually address as a team?
I think it's something to do with last. Obviously, the first week has been pretty decent for us. I don't think we have done anything like super special or anything. But yeah, like when it also comes down to how we do in practice. How we do in practice has kind of set us up to also have high expectations for ourselves.
Yeah, we just saw some clips here from both of your series. I feel like individual players are more often stepping up for Splice, especially Kabe, because if I'm honest, for me, he was invisible. I couldn't remember a single instance in Spring Split where I was like, damn, you know, Kabe carried that game, or he really stood out. So I had, honestly, a poor opinion of him. But it does seem that the introduction of Mickey, or, you know, as you said, him leveling up individually now with a good support, has really unleashed him, because he's definitely stepping into the space in a lot of these team fights, and obviously get some of these quadra kills, whether they're like full fully his squad kills or not, but he's definitely delivering a lot more in team fights. Can you see his confidence grow as well, or is he just still the same player to you?
For me, he's still the same player. He's the copy carry. Like, he is best Lucian in Europe, in my opinion. But that's another story. But obviously, I've always seen him as a really, really good player. And it's so weird because when you play in an LCS team, there is this all that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see, that we live in a daily basis. And when you don't succeed on stage, it's kind of heartbreaking in a way, because you lose a lot of the power, like what you can do in game, and you maybe gonna play more passive. I have felt that too, like in my past, because I haven't always been the best player on stage. So it's definitely a rough scenario, but I'm just really happy that we are playing well now.
I feel almost that goes for the whole lineup of players. You said I never really noticed Kobe. I think that we didn't notice a lot of your players in the end of spring. It didn't seem like you could find the momentum, and it definitely seems like you've turned it around. Our player of the game in this one is Wonder, for this one specifically. It was Senkox in game 1, and those are two very interesting ones for me, because Senkox is always someone we looked at. Do you know if he had... there was high expectations around him. There's always this European mids, and looking at him, is that something that he personally really took to heart?
Not too much. I think the main thing about our team is that we want to work as a team, and we don't want to have like, oh, this guy, if this guy doesn't carry, then we're not gonna win, or if this guy doesn't perform, then we're not gonna win. We aim for us playing the game as good as possible in every scenario. So it's just a team effort for us, and that's what I really like about our team.
Well, ended great here, 2-0 over Giants. Moving on to our next series, Roccat versus Origin. 2-0 for OG, first sweep of the summer for them. A very anticipated match for us, as Roccat was on the rise, and OG was also doing fairly well last week with 2 ties, but they clean sweep them.
So yeah, coming into this week, one of the narratives we kind of predicted is like, okay, Origin, they're going to play less around their bot lane, more around SOAS. Turns out, actually, they were playing more around Power of Evil as a central kind of pawn on the chessboard. SOAS did incredibly well in both lane swaps, kind of catching straight farm, and he got ahead of his lane opponent in the lane swap. But Power of Evil had a couple nice plays to come out of the woodwork, and especially in game 1. I always knew Expecka had a nice Ashe, but he definitely confirmed it here in that game. He had some really nice arrows, so he definitely delivered that mid lane skill shot accuracy.
Right.
And it came to fruition here. So utility last week from Expecka was Sivir. Didn't really work out that well. This time they got the Ashe for him, and it definitely worked wonders for the team, and Origin finally get the 2-0, which is great for them. In addition, Rockat's getting punished for not doing anything in the early game, which I absolutely despise. Late game team and all, but like, you gotta come to play the game.
Absolutely, and you know, that is my biggest disappointment with Roccat, is they even said last week and week 1, they were like, this is our weakness, we're going to go away and work on this. This is what we're going to work on this week. And they come back, and it's the worst week they've had for early games. They were down like nearly 6,500 gold at 20 in that second
And they
game.
almost came back, that's the worst part. Origin almost let them come back and have them like the title of Comeback Kings.
Yeah.
It's so weird for me to see Rocket struggle in the early game, because just from last season playing against them you were I wouldn't say you were terrified, but you knew that they would force hard on the mid 2v2 with Betsy and Awax, and most of the time it worked out really well for them. But this season, Awax has really gone downhill with his play. It's kind of his play is kind of like high risk, high reward, right? So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm not too big of a fan of that kind of play style, especially now when we see like what happens if it kind of backfires a bit. So I think he needs to look at his play and maybe change up a bit. Maybe his play style doesn't work perfectly with the Rocket squad that they have now. Maybe just play it more slow when you have those big carries, I think.
Would you say that high risk, high reward jungling style has less opportunity right now with the state of how the early game plays out? We've seen a lot of the same lane swaps in today's games. Do you think that that's the case, and that just playing a very standard jungle game is actually just safer all around?
So my understanding of the jungle is that there's kind of 2 defined styles. There's like the high risk style, which is Airwax. It's kind of style, and then there's like the more control style. We see a guy like Bengi play this style, or Vision is
Oh,
great.
Well,
Vision
that's
is-
inspired to him, of
and
course.
let's
I
not go
think-
from like risk style to like sidestone jungler.
yeah, I mean, this is like the huge contrast of
Okay.
of the styles, right? And I think a style in between is probably the most ideal. Obviously, for Bengi, it's pretty good because he has these great players where he can just ward for them and they will carry. So it's pretty easy. But yeah, I think you need to find a middle ground in between that works for you. Obviously, sometimes in games, let's say you're the bottom team and you play against the best team, maybe you try to take some risk in the early game and try to snowball. But if you have solid players overall, like I think Rocket has solid players overall, I think you can maybe play a bit more controlled and do more like less risky play, and then just play with what information you have.
Actually, I want to delve deeper on one of those topics, if the host allows me here.
You're allowed.
Thank you. So the side stone on the jungle has completely disappeared, right? But I feel, have you guys dabbled a lot in like 1-3-1 double TP comps? Because I feel right now you can't push your advantage because you just simply lack vision. Because your support, especially when it's a range support, they can't do anything on their own. They need babysitting. So you lack wards and you lack supports that can face check. And it seems like 1-3-1 doesn't come to fruition at all.
One of the big problems for us in the first game when we had Fizz was that we couldn't put deep enough vision on the Fizz side that he could pressure enough that we could pressure
Capitalize in the mid lane.
Exactly. So I kind of agree, but you need to be able to get to that point where you can get the vision, else your 1-3-1 will have a hard time for sure.
Yeah, it's also something we saw in Rocket in their losses in the early game. They also didn't have the vision and they got collapsed on.
Definitely, just a lot of these teams, like they set up 1-3-1, but then they forget what it's all about. Like back in the day, it used to be about taking these side lane turrets in like 1v1 matchups. Teams are good enough at defending, so you want a 1-3-1, fan out, and then make picks in between the lanes, right? Or get double TPs. But there's absolutely no vision because these Namis and these Jannas, they're useless when it comes to face checking. Yeah, they can really help your AD carry, but that's it. They're so afraid to put vision down that we get these really stale mid games with fog of war everywhere. And for me, I wonder if somebody's gonna make like Sidestone Rek'Sai come back in these 1-3-1 comps, or do you just lose too much dueling power?
I mean, in the games today, I opted for a Sidestone before I completed my jungle item every time because we went for the 1-3-1 pretty early. So I wanted to keep up the vision for our sides to be able to push. But I agree, it's super easy to just get level 9 and then sweep the whole area, and then you need to refresh vision, and then it becomes a game of like vision all the time. And I mean,
just base and run back. That's your job. I think.
I mean, it's probably not that enjoyable to watch from home. So yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing to watch, all of it.
We love League of Legends here. Definitely nothing is bad with that.
Watching tactical good games is nice, but a brawl is also nice. It leads us to Fnatic versus Schalke. 2-0 for Fnatic after they were quite wobbly last week. They had that series versus H2K, which wasn't great, but here they did very well. And, you know, I gotta ask, the Schalke hype, was it unwarranted, or was it just a symptom of the week 1 teams trying to figure everything out? Where do we see this going?
I feel like, honestly, for Schalke right now, when you look at them, they're like the inverse Rocket. They actually still have a fairly decent early game to them, and that's where there's like these little areas of hype. But the problem is that Gilius, as we've talked about a couple of times, is just not able to really stand up to the rest of the junglers in the league. And Trashy, have you got any thoughts perhaps on that?
I think Gilius has what it takes. But I think the biggest problem for Gilius is that sometimes he gets like too eager to force something. Then you just have to go like, maybe I'm getting a little bit behind, and then he forces a play, and then maybe it backfires, and then the game is lost. Like when we see those big moments when he plays against Unicorns, where he just 1v9 the game as Elise against Kindred, then you have to respect him in a way. But he also has those games against us where he was invisible and was not hitting anything. So he's kind of weird player for me to value. He has his up and down for sure.
Maybe he's just absorbing some failures right now, you know, to get a lot better.
Oh yeah,
that's what he was joking about. No, Gilius for me is a player. I think he needs to get a lot of more like stability in his play, both in his reactions to failures. In the moment, I think he can make it like relatively like assess the situation afterwards, but in the moment, definitely needs to work towards playing a lot more control. Is he one of those junglers that you would classify as high risk, high reward?
Yes, definitely. I think for me, what has changed over the summer is that I've been watching a lot of replays of like how Trick was playing, and kind of understand his thought process about like what he does and what he does for his team in terms of vision and setting up plays. And it made me understand that a lot of the things he does is not a lot of risk because he already has information to work with. So it might sound a bit weird, but I tried to copy his style a bit and then play consistently. So I value very highly that you, as a jungler, have a consistent style of play, and I don't think he has that right now.
How much do you rate Trick higher than number 2 or anyone below them in the league?
I think he's one step higher than anyone else in the league.
Yeah, just I want to echo that because Trick's the style as well. Yes, it works because G2 had strong lanes. Because I feel for me, Trick goes in, places some vision, and that's his first piece of information, and then he uses that information for the next play he makes, and suddenly he's always like a move ahead. Or if he's at the same time, at least knows what move you're making. So he's very aware, and I think that was one of G2's strengths. Spirit for me played a similar style in Fnatic, but because his lanes weren't doing that well and his support didn't have the synergy, I guess he was failing. Right now he seems to change. I think we could classify him as like with the Kha'Zix pickups a lot of in that high risk, high reward category.
Obviously I'm not a big fan of Kha'Zix. I think it's way too risky.
Haven't you played it in my game once?
Probably in solo queue, but there's a big difference, you know. You can carry in solo queue, but on stage and in a professional game, it's a whole different story. But I think the people that are like pushing to get to Trick's level is Jankos and Spirit, and obviously today H2K won, I think.
Yep. Well, they drew.
Oh, okay. I only watched the first
Everybody
game.
won.
Well, we have a recap from that in just a couple of seconds. So
I will just wait for that one.
While we're on Spirit, it was good to see Fnatic pivoting from what we said was a fairly kind of linear playstyle. A lot of Kalista, a lot of Kha'Zix 4 games last week. They actually went and played meta now, which I think makes for a more dangerous Fnatic than one that's very easily read like H2K showed us last week. So I think that's a Fnatic that can very well improve from that. But I still kind of struggle with Gamsu at times, just because he just tends towards those tanks too much, and I think it becomes a limiting factor. Today we didn't see that from them, but again, I'm keeping my eyes on that for tomorrow.
Yep, another match I want to look at. Obviously, you just mentioned that you didn't see it. H2K versus G2, a tie, and it was really stomp and get stomped, or stomp or get stomped, rather, from both sides. In the first game, it was H2K, though. A lot of good setups by Vander on that Bard. Crappo.
Didn't see it. I got tweets. Apparently, I should have been casting that game, so let's just take a look.
I think Bard was 1v9 this game.
Yeah, I mean, you just missed the Bard ult that actually sets this up. There was nothing happened before 20 minutes, just a standard lane swap. And then H2K just took back-to-back fights again and again. So many good ults from Vander, getting the lockdown, getting the...
I saw it. It really stopped moving on the minimap. He hit that ulti off-screen, so... Bard 1v9 is one of the most beautiful things to watch in League of Legends, in my opinion.
Okay.
Well, you know what isn't beautiful? Seeing H2K get stomped in about 25 minutes, because Freeze dies level 1, burns his flash, burns his heal, then they go top lane, get 3 more kills, and Mithy was just on a rampage for the beginning of this game, and it transitioned into G2, kind of completing what you'd expect was like a scrim game, where it's like you get 5 kills before 5 minutes and suddenly the game's already over.
Oh, this was the horrible 3v1 trade there in the bottom lane that we got. I caught a glimpse of that. Yeah, that definitely seems like the entry of a scrim game where you're like, guys, can we get a remake? Does that still happen very often, Trashy? The remakes, or have teams started taking like losses in the early game seriously?
It really depends who you play against.
Oh.
I think it's... I can't go too much into this, but I mean, we had the pleasure to get stomped as well last week against G2. So I know the feeling. They're very good when they get lead and they know what to do. So yeah, they're definitely a force to be reckoned with.
It was very nice to watch the end of the game because it was the classic meet in the middle. They were actually both happy with what happened because they each got a stompy win that was very convincing. But H2K and G2, clearly the strongest teams in the league. How would you rank them? The same question I asked about Trick, actually. How much of a difference is there between G2 either or G2, H2K, and the rest?
I mean, that's a really tough one. I think obviously H2K won against Fnatic, so they should be above them. But I mean, I want to see ourselves play against those teams. I think if we reach if we play at our highest, we can compete against them. As we played, like the first game we played against G2, I think it was a very close game, and we showed that we can play against them on a similar level. But if we don't show up, then we will probably just get a stomp. So I can't really rate it too much. I think I want to play them myself to see like how well we can do against it.
How is the increase of games here kind of treating you so far? Because if we compare how many games you've played, you would be over the halfway point by the string split already, you know, at this point. Is it helping you guys in terms of progression? Because you talked about how Scrim's stage is a little bit different, solo queue stage is a lot different.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying the fact that you get to play a lot more games on stage. You feel more comfortable overall. Today was a bit off day for us, I think, but overall, like, it's okay to have an off day on stage, right? As long as you can learn from it.
As long as you can still go 2-0.
Yeah. That's not playoff.
So overall, really happy with it. We learn so much every time we go on stage and play in terms of our communication about what we do on the map, etc. So I like it.
Yeah, it shows. Let's take a look at the standings at the halfway point in week 3 here. G2 obviously still riding high in first. Fnatic are right on their tail in second, and then H2K. Very interestingly, Vitality, who we didn't touch on yet, they had a 2-0 over UOL today, and they broke the 3-way tie for 7th and jumped, from 7th to 4th. So that's a 5th, actually. A very big jump for them, and it just shows how important it is for these teams. You see Origin also taking 2 teams up there. How important it is to get a 2-0, especially Vitality coming back into their own versus UOL today.
With the introduction of the point system, where you obviously get rewarded more for like 2 straight wins, knocking like your straight competitors down is so important, and it makes the close games be so much more sour too. Because imagine if you closely could have gone 1-1, but you end up losing 2-0 to your opponent. That's like a big swing. Like, you lose that 1 point you would have gotten, and they get 2 more. So like, it's a 3-point swing, relatively speaking, and then they spiral out of control.
And that's a key thing for the G2 H2K series, is a 1-1 at the top of the table opens up.
Everybody's happy. Yeah.
Like, Fnatic lose to H2K last week in a dominating victory for H2K, and suddenly Fnatic jump them this week by getting 3 points. It's like that really, you know, tough mix of having a 1-1 or a 3-0 can really mix the standings up week after week.
Are you guys looking at the standings already, or is it just like a week-to-week kind of...
I mean, it's hard to not look at it when we are that high, you know. We're not used to this.
You're like, playoffs.
Maybe.
What is playoffs, you know?
What is happening, you know?
You have to cancel your vacation that you've planned during playoffs now?
I'm not too sure about that. I don't think I have any plans yet, maybe. But no, I think we probably have to cancel if we keep this up.
Send your suggestions for the vacation of Spice.
Oh, that's assuming they go to relegation.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, but I think obviously tomorrow we're gonna face Fnatic, and whoever comes ahead of that matchup is gonna look pretty good in the standings for sure. But we have to play better tomorrow if we wanna play up against Fnatic for sure. They're a really good team. But I'm just super excited for tomorrow. I can't wait.
Yeah, it will be a very exciting matchup of you guys as well. Let's take a look at the leaderboard, the hard carries today for the player of the game. Cabochard twice.
Yep.
I do want to talk a bit more about Vitality, as we didn't touch on it yet. Cabochard, someone that was always a hard carry for them, now 2 times player of the game, and such an important win versus UOL for them.
Yeah, so he gets 2 points today, but that does it was very much so a team effort, and in both these games it was him slightly cashing in on the setup that his team did for him. Like, we have to stress that. But he played Aurelia and had a couple of really nice teleports, really dismantling the backline from the Unicorns in the second game. But the first game was really close, could have gone either way. It was one of those mid games, you know, where nothing happens for a while. Everybody's dancing on the Baron, not starting it, and then suddenly Baron gets taken. Does that still happen a lot in scrims where suddenly there's...
Yeah.
It happened in their
guys,
game.
Anybody have a ward? Oh, Baron disappeared.
And then when they get the Baron, it's kind of like, oh, I guess we lost, or something like this. So it's very deadly, especially with the addition of Mountain Drakes. You can do it so fast, and you really have to respect it a lot. But definitely, Barons are very, very game-changing right now. I mean, we saw that in our last game here too. Like, if I didn't steal that Baron, we probably would have lost. For sure.
All the games that I've either watched briefly or casted today seem to be very heavily reliant around Baron, because lane swaps have gone kind of down to a T for a lot of this team, so everybody else had to play them, not get too far behind, and then the mid game goes very stale. Elder Dragon spawns a little bit too late. Would you like to see another game impacting objective come out? Because it's almost impossible to siege, it feels like.
I think the biggest problem with the Elder Drake is that it only lasts 2 minutes, and so a lot of teams will prioritize Baron over this, and then they will just wait and do nothing. Like, you can just sit and wait for the Elder Drake to get out, and then you can fight or pressure the game again with Nash. So I would like it to maybe be a little bit longer, so there's like equal
opportunity.
Equal opportunity for the power of the two objectives. But yeah, that's why I think Nash is better right now than the Eldrick.
Yeah, are you also like struggling to kind of? I feel like you can never open up a base right now without a Baron. I feel it never happens anymore in pro play where there's no side lane being pushed in. Like back in the day, you maybe had like, I don't know, a Gnar, whittling down a turret eventually. Right now, everybody seems so good at defending in 1-3-1 or in 4-1 comps that you can't get into the base without that Baron.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's really hard. You have to be super strong in the 1-3-1 to be able to do this, and then bring up the topic before with division. Like you also have to do that on point. So there's a lot of things you have to do on point every time to get to that point where you can actually pressure the outer towers and side towers with the split push. So it's very team effort to be able to pressure them up for sure.
How close is Splice to doing that? What step is failing right now?
I think right now the biggest thing for us is that we sometimes lack a bit of communication, and we need to be better at listening to each other and communicating more. And I think that is probably the thing we have to work the most on.
All right, we will keep that in mind and look ahead to your match tomorrow versus Fnatic. Let's take a look at the rest of the matches on the slate. The UOL is taking on G2. They will be hitting the Rift rather in the arena, and they'll be followed by Splice versus Fnatic, and in the studios Roccat versus Schalke to start the day, followed by Vitality versus H2K. Wow, Stress, is Vitality strong enough right now to take on this H2K?
I didn't catch today's Vitality games. I have to say no, just looking at their past performances and the little bits that I caught at least. At least not H2K from last week.
The Crepo giggle, what is it?
No, I caught the games, and the answer is no.
No way. Okay, good.
I mean, the scope of this matchup has changed too much to like start a Spling Split where there was like Vitality having the makings of a really good team, and then H2K losing some of their players and all, and or the swaps going around. But then suddenly, I don't know, Vitality they've been on the decline. Like they went from like self-proclaimed super team by Shook, that person that said that is now removed from the roster.
That's rough.
Yeah, what's your take on them?
I think Vitality have really, really good players, but they seem to struggle to work together, and that is the biggest thing. I think from judging from practice, they seem better than they're performing, so that's a good sign, I think. But they need more time, and with I've never played with the Koreans before, so I can't really judge myself. But maybe they have some issues in terms of communication that they need to fix. But I wouldn't be too worried if I was Vitality. I think they can still grow and get to playoffs. They have the players to get there at least.
From an outside perspective, I feel like they need to fix their instability, whether it's Police in, Riot in, bringing them in. I know they've been scrimming with both, so there is a sense of practice with that. But as you said, they've got communication issues that you can see play in game. It doesn't look like anything other than aggression is leading them on Summoner's Rift. So it's like, hey, you guys have got to find a solid voice, a solid base to start playing from, and then maybe we'll see the growth.
And with that, we'll see what happens tomorrow in that Vitality game. Until then, we need to sign off, of course. Thank you so much, Trashy.
Welcome and happy birthday.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone at home as well. But we'll see you all back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Summer Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. So see you then.